training.
field. I mean,
Yeah, it'll be
do you need it?
kinesiology. If she wants to work at a collegiate level, she's got to have a master's. So,
And I can't
Okay,
go over.
that's
yeah.
I
So,
wondered.
but it could be exercise
My
science, it
youngest
could
is
be
engaged. I mean, wedding
kinesiology,
dress
it could be
shopping.
athletic training, it could be,
Thanks.
there's all different
Yeah,
options.
seems like she's 10 still. We went wedding dress
We'll see.
shopping, I guess one day last week. And they both live in Wisconsin, so we met in Wisconsin. And
got
we walked
7
into this
o'clock.
dress store. Nobody that worked there had a mask.
7 o'clock, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Invite everyone to please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Jim Gambit,
Here?
Steve Nelson,
Here?
James Shiloh,
Here.
Julene Davy,
Here.
Jeff Jacobson,
Here.
Eric Jones,
Present.
Kristen Wren,
Here.
quorum's present.
Are there any changes to the agenda as proposed? Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as proposed?
So move.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
You're opposed?
I think there was just a delay on that.
He's
Oh,
got
just a delay? Sorry.
Sorry.
We'll wait for you.
We'll wait now, yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Shiloh,
Yes.
Davy,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes?
Wren,
Yes.
Gambit,
Yes.
motion carried.
Audience to visitors. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the board this evening? If you would state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Good evening. My name is Craig Peterson. I live in Sycamore. I have a daughter and son that are both in high school, and I'd just like to encourage you, as you're having discussions this evening, to proceed forward and make sure that we get the kids back in school next week, as we have discussed many times. Not very many people here this evening, but there's plenty of comments out there about people are ready. It's just time to get back, and just wanted to take a minute this evening and encourage you to consider that as you deliberate here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board? All right, we'll move on then. At this point, I'll convene a public hearing concerning the intent of the Board of Education to sell $20 million in working cash fund bonds for the purpose of increasing the working cash fund of the district, and $2,900,000 funding bonds for the purpose of paying claims against the district. Are there any comments from the board? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak on this issue? The record should reflect there were no comments from the board and that no one has come forward to speak on this issue.
Okay.
Is there anyone who wishes to submit written materials? Again, the record should reflect that no one came forward with written materials, and I will therefore declare the hearing closed. Next item is communications, correspondence, informational items, letters and newsletters. We had some. FOIA requests, we had one. And that's been addressed, right?
Yes.
We're moving on. Committee reports.
We did have a planning and zoning meeting last night via Zoom. Nothing earth-shattering, a couple of special use permit requests that had gone through a first vote, coming back for a second, to relocate spider tattoos to a facility about a block east of where they currently, or where they used to be. And also to allow space in where the forge used to be out east end of town for one of the local churches that has multiple campuses. So they can move into that part of that space, and then some cleanup and some housekeeping items, so nothing major there. SEF has their next meeting coming up the end of the month, and it is a grant meeting that's coming up, so we will be issuing grants based on the money that was raised at the Take Root event this past fall.
Other committee reports? Okay. Superintendent's report.
Good evening. It's good to see everybody. It's been a couple of weeks plus a holiday in between the last time we met and tonight. It's good to see everybody. So I'll start the superintendent's report as I usually do. I forgot David gave me the clicker tonight, so. Our mission, yeah, look out. Power corrupts. I won't go too far down that road. Our mission is to empower all learners to succeed in their world. Our vision is to provide an ideal learning experience where students and staff are engaged and want to come back the next day. Our core values are honesty, trustworthiness, integrity, equality, empathy, respect, citizenship, digital citizenship, responsibility, and collaboration. Our professional learning communities ask themselves 5 questions. What do we want students to know and learn? What do students want to know and learn? How will we know if they have learned it? What will we do if they don't learn it? And what do we do if they already know it? And that takes us to the first part of the superintendent's report, which is an update on all things at West Elementary School. And Principal Ryan Schrader is here to share an update with the board.
Welcome.
Good evening. Happy New Year's, everyone.
Happy New Year.
So when I found out that I was doing the presentation tonight, people told me, keep it short, but don't talk too fast. So I will definitely try my best with that tonight.
Take whatever time you need.
Up on the first slide here, this is our West Elementary. This is our staff. In a normal school year, we would be hosting the board meeting tonight at West Elementary School, and all my staff would be there to support. Since they can't all be here, I figured I'd bring them with me, Bitmoji style. It's a good-looking group, huh?
Very impressive staff you have.
I just love their flexibility. This morning when I emailed them all and said, I'd love for your Bitmoji pictures, within the first hour, all of them had emailed them to me and they're ready to go. So, great staff.
Glad they could be with us.
First, I want to start with saying thank yous. This has been a definitely trying year for everyone, staffs, parents, boards, superintendents. But I just want to take this time to thank our maintenance staff, custodial staff, everything we've asked of them, anything we've needed, they've taken care of it right away. Every time we've needed a mask, hand sanitizer, cleaning protocols, it's right there. They've never batted an eye with anything. They've always taken care of it right away. And I'm very thankful for Mr. Ekstrom and all his crews and everything, all the building techs are doing inside of our buildings day in and day out to make sure our staffs can come in there and it's safe and clean and everything like that. So thank you to them. Our nursing staff, Corey has done a phenomenal job with her staff, keeping up to date with everything, protocols, anything we need, you know, they get us to us, information we need, anything that we ask is done right away. The extra supportive staff that we needed in the nursing department, they've done, so thank you to their staff. Our tech staff, I know the devices have been an issue all year, but at the same time, what Roxanne's staff has done for all of our buildings across the district has been awesome. Getting devices for kids, devices break, any kind of Google Classroom help, they've just been top notch with all that, so I want to thank the tech staff. The next is all of our staffs. What our teachers, you know, and when I say staff, I mean everyone, secretaries, they've just worked around the clock. We've asked them to do something and they just do it. Everyone's come together to help each other out. And I just can't say enough positive things about all of our staffs and how hard they're working right now, day in and day out. The professional communication that they have with one another, and just to be there helping to support one another has just been awesome. I know, like I said it before, it's been a really trying year for everyone. It's been really hard, the flexibility and going back and forth. But what our staffs are accomplishing right now, going from changing what they went into education for to where we are right now, they've worked very, very hard around the clock, and they just keep doing it for our kids. So I want to thank all of our staffs for that. The last thing is for thank yous is our elementary principals. I know I'm up here talking about West. but at the same time, the group of elementary principals that I get to work with day in and day out, I can't say enough positive things about them. Whether it's a text message, they're usually the group I'm getting my last text message from at night, and usually Mr. Janish likes to send them about 2:30 in the morning. So I can't say enough positive things about them, and without them, this would be a very difficult year, more than it already is. But the support that they do and the communication that we have, we meet 4 to 5 times a week, weekly, and it's just a great group, and to be there for support or questions, us sharing workload with one another. Just been great to have that group of people to work with day in and day out. So the pictures I have up here are currently what our building looks like. The left-hand corner one is how our desks are set up currently with the social distancing. The one on the right is what our cafeteria looks like with the dots on the tables. And we actually only have 2 kids per table. Usually we have anywhere from 16 to 20 kids at a table, so there's only 2 kids at each one of our tables. And then the bottom right-hand corner is around our whole entire school, every 6 feet is a sticker that looks like that with the Spartan head on it to remind students of the social distancing in the hallways. So even though this year is very different, I still think it's been very successful. We learned a whole new way of teaching. Teachers are teaching, whether that's remotely, hybrid parallel model, teaching in front of a screen to students. It's a whole different way that we've ever done before, but it's been great, it's been successful, and I'm happy about that. Our virtual meetings, our board meetings like this, our staff meetings, IEP meetings, parent-teacher conferences, PLCs, are all things that we've met more frequently because of the Google Meets and the virtual meetings. Whether we were remote or in person, we still continued with all of our services, our reading services, speech services, social work services, ELL, special education, OT, PT, and specials. Currently at the elementary school, we're currently doing once a week pop-up specials where students can join live meets with our art, music, and PE teachers, which has been very successful, and a lot of kids are in attendance for that. Communication, this is something I feel has really increased this year. Emails, Google Classrooms, and Seesaw. Parents, I feel sometimes you talk to them, they're going, holy cow, I'm getting between you and the classroom teachers and the paraeducators and the special education teachers. We're getting all this communication, but I think that's very important right now, because I think the more we communicate, the more that everyone's on the same page and we're all working together, and I'm really happy with where our communication is at this time. Like I said before, it's very different than past years, but students are still learning, they're still being successful, and that's something we're really all really proud of. So things we're currently working on. This is a picture of Mr. Buckner, one of our 4th grade teachers. And this is just some of the things that classroom teachers are doing to keep those students engaged. But he's got his nice little costume on there, and it goes through our Holiday Spirit Week, what we were doing for that on every day. But the things we're working on currently are attendance, designations. We just finished that up with all of our designations. And our district office has done a phenomenal job with that, keeping everyone in the loop. As soon as a parent called or emailed, they let us know right away to check in with us to make sure whether they're going to go hybrid A, hybrid B, or remote. But they've done a really nice job with staying up to date with all that. Engagement pieces, these are things we continue to work on. I know when Mr. Janish did this presentation a long time ago, that was one of the things we talked about, and that's one of the things we continue to work on and look at and tweak and update. Right now we're doing our room furniture setups, so our building custodians and maintenance staff are going around with the building principals and looking at each classrooms, how many kids are going to be in each day to make sure we have enough desks and tables and spread out the social distancing and measuring. So that's currently going on right now. Reading assessments, all of our teachers are doing assessments for reading to level our kids to know exactly where we are with our reading levels. We're getting ready for our return to in-person learning. We're also in the talks about our Spartans Read Together, which is our one book, one district, where we all do that. So we're currently in the talks with doing that with SEF and our reading committee and things like that. So we're looking forward to that. And then supply pickups we're currently still doing. And then the last thing we're currently working on is work completion. That's one of the things that we continue to work at and look at and talk with our classroom teachers. There's some times where parents assume that their kids, because they see on their side that the work was turned in, but a lot of times what's happening is they might just turn a blank sheet in, so the teacher's sending it back, and just that communication of back and forth of what is actually considered completed and what do they still need to redo and turn back in. Our building goals at West Elementary School this year are, number one is social and emotional for students and staff. It's very important. Every day our students fill out a mood check-in, and the teachers get a copy of that right after they've all done that and completed that. If any students puts in their sad or mad or anything like that, it directly goes right to our social workers, so we can contact and reach out to see how we can help. Technology, teachers using Google Classroom and Seesaw. The Seesaw, some teachers have used it previously, but now with the district purchasing the Seesaw package, all of our teachers are currently using Seesaw at the elementary level. Number 3 is provide a safe and positive learning environment for both staff and students. That's something, whether we're in a pandemic or in a normal school year, that's something that's very, very important. Our kids, when they feel safe and comfortable coming into our classrooms, they're going to learn more, and when they know those teachers care about them, they're going to try even harder for them. And the last one is number 4 is communication. This is something I feel like, even though I feel like we're doing a really good job, it's something we can always improve on and look at ways that we can improve on that and get better in any situation that we can. Activities that we've done so far at West, whether we were in person or remote. Spirit Weeks, which has been a lot of fun. In that picture, you can see it's a Google Meet with a classroom. That was one of our hat days. Headgear during holidays. The kids had a lot of fun with that. Mrs. Saber one day dressed as Santa, so it was fun to see all the kids just getting excited. They were excited to get on there and see their friends and what they were wearing, and they just have a lot of fun with that. We did a virtual family reading night, which our reading teachers at West put together. There was a lot of slides, books that they could go, games they could do. There's a picture of 2 of our students there that have books from family reading night. So even though we couldn't be in person to do that, we were still pushing that stuff out so the students had an opportunity to still do some fun activities. We did principals challenges where students submitted pictures of things like whether it was building a bridge or trick shots or things like that. So we continue doing those. Battle the Books, we are continuing working. We do those every week, where we have competitions here in our community. We have our K-Kids that have continued doing meetings and doing different activities. They have a meeting coming this Friday where they're going to make cards, Valentine's Day cards for the nursing home. Choir, band, orchestra have all continued. We've continued with our monthly core values each month. We did a Butter Braids fundraiser. We did a virtual book fair. We continue doing SEL lessons weekly. We did a Red Ribbon Week. Right before winter break, we did a holiday bingo for staff. Just trying to keep things not only fun for the kids, but also fun for the staff too, and keeping them engaged. And today we actually just finished up here about an hour ago with school pictures at West, which I've got about 253 students, and we had roughly about 175 students come to do school supply pickup as well as school pictures. So I was really happy with the turnout, and got a lot of positive feedback from parents saying that they were really happy that we were still able to get school pictures in. So this picture then is a couple of my paraeducators at West Elementary School doing fun activities. The one on the left is for our 3rd grade. Mrs. Nyhan is doing some snowball flashcard funs with the kids, and they're doing competitions of trying to build the snowmen. And then on the one on the right, Mrs. Holtz is doing with the 4th grade math flashcards, and they're doing football. So they're keeping scores. Kids can go one way or the other trying to score points. It's just a lot of fun for the kids, and they have a lot of fun doing the math flashcards, and I'm really appreciative of how hard our paraeducators are working day in and day out and making things exciting for the kids. Next couple slides are going to be some pictures of what a day really looks like currently, whether it's remote or in person. The one on the left is a Google Meet that one of my 4th grade teachers is doing. It's the kids on the right. You can see all their little screens, and the one on the left is the picture. So this is the teachers using their Elmo in their classroom. She's sharing her screen so the kids can see what book she's talking about and reading. And then she can also, on the right of the screen, she can see all of her kids, whether they have a question. They can type in a comment in there. But this way, she can present. They can all see at home. And then she can see on the screen all of the kids at the same time. The one on the right is our LEAF program at West Elementary School. And it's hard to see, but there's 3 teachers in here, and each one of them are doing a Google Meet with one of our different students. They're all socially distanced and spread out, but it's great to see them. I mean, even though it's a smaller class, it's great to see them working individually with each student at that time. These pictures then is the one on the left is one of my kindergarten teachers. I snuck in there and took a picture real quick, but she is doing a live meet with her kiddos. The one on the far right is one of the pictures that we were in person. The teacher's wearing a mask, and then you can see the big screen TV that she is showing the kids can be in class. They can see who their friends are at home or engage with one another between the students who are remote and hybrid. And then the bottom screen is just a picture of a Google Meet where students were getting to have lunch with their classroom teacher, which was a lot of fun. And then the top middle one is one of our paraeducators. You guys can kind of see there's a glass wall divider in between. We've kind of divided and conquered all over West Elementary with every nook and cranny we can find, a paraeducator or a classroom teacher is around the building so that when they do have time to meet with students, they can take their mask off when they're in their own environment. But I love the little sign, it's hard to see, but it says, "Like a good neighbor, stay over there." And on the other side of the glass wall is another one of our paraeducators. So it's just fun. I always laugh when I go down there and see that sign because it's true. We want to try to, all of our staffs are doing a great job with socially distance and make sure we're wearing our mask and making sure that we're all following safety protocols. Talk a little bit about when we were in person. So it was different but great. In-person learning from November 4th to 20th. We had lots and lots of protocols in place. And not only did our staff do a great job with it, but our kids, I can't say enough positive things about them. For those little ones to wear masks all day long, they did exactly what we've asked them to do. And we couldn't be more proud for how they followed all of our rules and regulations. During that time, our smallest class size, whether it was a hybrid A day or hybrid B, was 4. Our largest class size for the day was 10. We had an attendance rate, whether it's hybrid or remote, of 98% during that time, which is awesome. I had one grade level group, which was either was a hybrid A or hybrid B group that was quarantined because of contact tracing and things like that. We had 47 students who were under COVID-19 protocol. But at the end of the day, it was amazing to see our kids in our building, to see those kids coming in every day. We had staff members holding the doors. As soon as they come in at every one of our entrances and exits, we have a little stand there with masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer. So as soon as any kid enters or exits our building, they automatically stop, we have a staff member there that squirts hand sanitizers on their hands so that we know they're clean to come into our building. But it was just amazing to see kids walking in the door. It's been a long time, so it was a lot of fun seeing those. In those pictures you can see of our little ones coming in the doors, and just, they're masked up, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and we're really proud of them. And like I said, it was different, but it was still great to see kids in our building. Some reminders I want to go over real quick. Just designations have been completed now. Class lists are being finalized this week. Our hybrid learning tentatively is scheduled for Tuesday, January 19th. Our hybrid A is Mondays and Wednesdays. Hybrid B is Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then our 4 days a week students are Monday through Thursday. Our elementary school times, the doors will open at 8:45. Students can arrive between 8:45 and 9. Our 9:05 a.m. tardy bell morning announcements. And then 9:15 is our morning meeting. We go live with all students. And then our dismissal time, we start dismissing or getting ready for dismissal at 1:45, and by 2 o'clock, all of our students are on buses or have been picked up and are out of the building. Some other reminders is from 2:15 to 2:30 is our remote-only learning pod. Live times are new content, and that's been very successful with that content being live. Of course, these are recorded so that if a student does miss those live content times, they can always preview the videos later. Attendance is mandatory. Fridays will remain asynchronous for all students. We'll have the 9:15 morning meeting, and then the rest of the content will be pushed out asynchronously. Supply pickups moving forward now for remote students will be weekly on Fridays from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And then our bus company, which thank you to Kathy Sheehan and all that she's helping with the meals and supply pickups. If the parents can't come pick supply pickups up, our bus company comes, picks all the supplies up and drops those off at every student's door who didn't get a chance to pick those up. So that will continue on Fridays. So at 12:15, our school bus drivers will come pick those materials up and drop those off to the students on Friday so that they have their materials and ready to go by Monday. Please, parents, continue talking with your students about the importance of mask wearing, hand washing, and socially distance as we plan to get back to in-person learning. Also, please make sure, if you've already filled out the COVID-19 self-certification form, you are good to go. That was a one-time thing you had to fill out, but if those parents who were remote before and they're moving their children into hybrid learning, please make sure that is filled out before they come back to school on Tuesday. Extra masks packed in the students' backpacks would be greatly appreciated. Transportation, make sure your transportation bus is correct. If you needed transportation, make sure you signed up for that. If you needed it and you have not gotten any information, please contact transportation so that is ready to go for next week. Meals, every day students are there, they get to bring meals home with them for those days that they will not be in person. If you're not signed up for those meals, please contact district office so that's taken care of and ready to go. And then the the big thing here is when riding the bus, one of the things we've always talked about is because of the safety protocols and having to have the windows down, just please make sure, as it's cold weather out right now, please make sure your students are dressed appropriately for the weather. The windows will be down, so you're going to need to make sure they have hats on, gloves, coats, and that's the same thing for when we do outside recess, so that they're warm and dressed appropriately. And then continue, whether you're remote or hybrid, just please continue calling in for attendance so we know whether that student is supposed to be present or not, whether in person or through the Google Meets. I also want to thank you to our WSO and our parents. When we did our supply pickup, they did a holiday backdrop during supply pickup, so the students were able to wear their Halloween costumes. The kids could go to the backdrop and do a picture in front of that, which was a lot of fun, so I'm appreciative of our WSO for purchasing that for us. Right before break, they purchased lunch for the whole staff from Jimmy John's, which was really nice for them to do that. We've had one parent that has provided coffee for our whole entire staff twice now this year, which is greatly appreciated. Our WSO also did some welcome bags for students as they came back to our buildings, and just the endless support for all our kiddos at home, as well as supporting our teachers for all that they're doing, whether that's our WSO or all of our parents. We really appreciate it. We know it's hard, but we're very grateful for all that you're doing right now. This was a sign that one parent bought for us that hangs in our building, but it says, "Remember why you started." I think that's a great sign right now, and I think I find myself reading it daily just because it is tough. I'll be completely honest, it's tough every day. But at the end of the day, when you get on that Google Meet and you see that kid smiling, or you are in person, you see the kid walking down the hallway smiling because they're happy in the building, even though it's hard, you always go back and remember why we got into this profession, and that's to make a difference and help kids out. And I'm really appreciative of that parent for buying that sign for us at our building. Even though there's been a lot of positive things, whether we're hybrid, remote, there's still obstacles we continue to face. One thing is devices. When I talk about devices, I'm not necessarily talking about, we haven't got our order in of tech devices or anything like that. Just about devices of the ones currently that we've handed out to students. Our tech has done a great job getting on the supply and demand there. But as we go further along, some of our devices are getting broken. They're older. They can't get parts and things like that. So that's one thing that we're facing right now is devices. If someone is at home, a device breaks, they've been bringing it in, and our building techs have done a great job with getting them ready and getting them under the device. But as those devices come in that are broken, it's tougher to get more and more of those devices fixed and get back out to families. Distractions at home. Just things that are happening in the background, whether a parent's watching TV or older brother, siblings watching TV when their students are trying to do Google Meets and things like that. So just some of those distractions. We try to tell students find a comfy spot. We also understand that there's sometimes where there's not enough room in a household, or the parents want all the kids in the same room to make sure they can keep a close eye on them. Students not having their cameras on. A lot of times that becomes an issue because if they have their cameras off, we don't know whether they're playing video games, watching TV, or if they're even in the household at that time. So it's important to make sure our cameras are on unless there's a situation that you've set up with the principal or the classroom teacher for situations where your cameras need to be off. Teachers having to micromanage kids at home, kids in the classroom, and those students that didn't show up for the live sessions. That's been one thing we've had a lot of conversations with classroom teachers, and that's across the district, is it's when we were in person, they say they find themselves, they're talking to the screen like they used to when they're remote, and then they got their kids sitting out in front of them, and then not only are you worrying about the kids on the screen and those kids that are sitting right in front of you, but then you also got to remember about those kids that for some reason weren't able to attend that day. How are we going to get them that education piece and make sure that they're completing some of the work that they were supposed to do? Staffing is something we've been talking about as we get ready to return to learn. One issue right now is our grade levels. Originally when we were doing, our kids would go out, say a second grade classroom would go outside for recess. Both classes would be out on one playground because of the contacting and things like that, and trying to keep kids separated as much as possible. We are actually going to split, at least not every building, but in my building, we're going to split grade level on each playground. The struggles I'm having with that is there might be days where there's only 4 kids on one playground and there's 8 or 10 on the other playground, but in order to keep them safe, we're going to be splitting them up on the different playgrounds. Engagement is something we continue to work at. How do we keep these kids engaged? How do we keep them coming back every day? How do we get to make sure that they are learning and putting effort into and participating every single day? That's not just one live time, that's 3 live times, and then also completing the work. Assessments has been something, we're constantly talking about. What is the best way we can assess these kids? And that's not necessarily a test, but just assessing to make sure we know where our kids are. A lot of parents are trying to help kids as much as possible, and that's kind of where sometimes we run into a little bit of issue with assessments, because it's tough to say, I know this kid is right now in math at grade level, and they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and they're understanding that content that we're providing right now. But with it being Google Meets, is it the child that's actually learning everything with the assessment and they're doing those assessments correctly? Or is it that parent or guardian at home that's helping them a little bit? So just assessments like how much do we put in all of our eggs in one basket and say, yes, these kids are exactly where they're supposed to be in certain classes, or are they getting that extra help from home? So just continue looking at assessments and how valuable that is and all that fun stuff. The last thing is evaluations. One thing I'm very happy with our SEA and our para committee is they went back and looked at our evaluation process to, kind of the pandemic that we're in. And, but just an issue with having to do all of these evaluations right now when we're having to sub or do different duties in the building. If we have an evaluation scheduled, but we need to go sub, just making sure we have the time and efficiency to make sure that we're getting all these evaluations done on a daily basis. The picture is in the right-hand corner then is something I never thought we'd ever have to become so immune to, but it's camera on, camera off, microphone on, microphone off. I always love when I'm on Google Meets and you see little popsicle sticks going up of microphones on, cameras off. But it is amazing to see our littles navigate through these Google Meets, and they know when to turn it on, when to turn it off, and when they need to be turning their microphone on. So it's amazing to see how far they've come. Then the last picture I have here, and I promise I won't take any more of your guys' time, but our art teacher in the building says we can't mask how excited we are to be back. This was an assignment they did, and on the one it's like a self-portrait of themselves, and the one on the left is the self-portrait with all of them wearing masks. So I thought that's really cool. That's like a bulletin board up in our building. But I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me today. I know we're tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, and whether we do go back or not, I'm just excited to see where we are with learning, and very appreciative for all the hard work that everyone's doing at this time. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and don't ever feel like you're taking too much time. Always, I'm serious. You should really take whatever time is necessary to present the materials that you have and that you think we should hear. We're not here to get out fast. We're here to try to do a job. So seriously, don't feel rushed when you're here, and take the time you need.
Thank you.
And thank you, and express our thanks to your staff and to your teachers and everybody in your building, and to your fellow principals and administrators, and let them know that we appreciate what they do too. We appreciate what you do.
Absolutely, I'll do that. Thank you.
Ryan, can I ask you a question real quick?
Absolutely.
Toward the beginning of your presentation, you talked about, I believe the word you used was completion, and use an example of a student that turned in a blank piece of paper and the teacher sending it back. Is that indicative of technology issues, like kids no, it's just normal?
Yeah. Can that happen? Absolutely. Our teachers are so good with, as soon as they get the assignments, they check through. And what happens is it shows from a student side of it, it'll say completed. So if a parent sees it, they'll say, oh, they turned everything in. It says completed right here. But from our side, it might say completed, but it would just be a blank piece of paper. They would take a picture of nothing, or it could be like a picture of their pencil when it was supposed to be their writing assignment.
Okay.
So then the teacher sends it back to say it's not completed, or it's 30% completed, you need to complete this part. So that has definitely helped with our communication. But there's also none of that, my dog ate my homework type deal, because
Right.
everyone's kind of on the same page then.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you, because I really feel that your whole presentation reinforces the commitment that the educators in this district have to our students. And I'm getting really tired of having people criticize staff and teachers. They're lazy, selfish, whatever it is. You just reinforced everything that I know is going on in the schools, that we all should realize, the teachers and staff, principals especially, working so hard to make this work. So thank you for an excellent presentation. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Good job, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. That takes us to website preview. One of the things that we've been working on is navigating or transitioning to a different website. That was a decision that was made in the spring, and we had hoped that we could get that off the ground over the summer and start the new school year, but COVID sidetracked our efforts a little bit. Mr. Olson has been kind of leading this work. So he's going to do just a little bit of a new website preview tonight. It's not ready to launch quite yet, probably sometime in the next week or so, as we fine tune the site itself as well as populate the information there. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Olson.
Thank you. Doing double duty tonight, so. All right, you can see my screen now. This will be a little laggy. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Just because of the technology we're using, but this is the redesign, refresh of the district's website, along with several school sites that I will show you. We have done a lot of work of providing fresh new content on lots of district information. If you've navigated some of the district sites, some of the department pages are just staff contact list. There was not a lot of information there. So we've done a lot of work to bring a lot of information that has been asked to the public in this way. So I'll navigate to some department pages just to kind of highlight what they look like. So each of the district's responsibilities offices are listed there. Key information that their directors or assistant supes provided to us, along with common resources that are asked for. We do and then each office also has a full listing of each staff member at each department level, so it's easy to contact the appropriate person. You'll see we've done a lot of different look. It's a lot lighter, cleaner than what was previously done. And then we are uploading tons of staff photos right now, so that is an important part of our story. And then a lot of resources have been brought over that were previously on the website, and we've added a lot of stuff too, making it easier to find and to communicate the stories that go on in our schools. And I'll just go over to a few school sites to kind of show you what they look like. At the high school, we've done a lot of work at the department levels there, providing overviews of what the department offers, listing of their staff is, and then each of their course offerings are listed at the course level to provide an overview of what they offer.
Awesome.
That's great.
And the nice thing about this is a lot of things are talking in the back end that the public doesn't generally see. So when we make an update now on this new website, it is updated throughout the entire thing. Currently, if we have one update that applies to all the schools, we have to log into 8 different school sites and make that one update. So this is going to streamline a very large workload in my office and for my staff. And so all of the courses are here. So this is what our course catalog and all of the high school courses are here. And like I said, they carry over to the departments as well. At the middle school, kind of the same look is carried over at each of the team levels. So common themes are listed there, and then their staff are also brought over. And then same thing at the elementary schools, making it easy to find the information you're looking for. So, North School staff and then the school supplies for that teacher.
Are you able to click on a teacher and it would take you to a link to their email or?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Let me show you that. So then, yes, all of the contact information is also there. We've also increased security here, so none of our websites are just openly available. So you'd click the icon and then it will open up in your email client. Currently, all of our websites are publicly easy to just copy and paste. Technology has not always enjoyed that because it's very easy to spoof our accounts that way. So we have done a lot of cleaning up and providing a more secure environment. One thing that you will not actively see on the site is we have had a huge focus on ADA accessibility on this new website. And in fact, there will be a tool that is added on here that will allow people who need further access on the site to customize the website for their viewing. So they might be able to increase contrast, turn it into a dark mode and stuff like that. And then the district also will receive a certificate stating that our website is ADA compliant, which is something very important for us. And that was a huge benefit to making this switch is we just needed to make that, and it was the right time to do it. So that is a preview of what we are going to be launching. Like Steve said, our goal is middle of next week. This will be switched over.
I thought the last website was amazing, so I can't get over it. It's just awesome. I love that it appears to be easier and actually has pictures and more information about course offerings, and really great.
Thank you. And that is something we are working with each of the departments is we will continuously update and improve. This is not just a one and done project. We will need to stay committed to making sure that is accurate and updated. So that's what I'm really looking forward to is we're just kind of scratching the surface of what we plan to do here.
Awesome.
Can you go back to the teaching and learning part? The whole thing looks great, much improved.
Yes. And then also I don't know if you caught this, but from each of the school sites, you can access this district menu that brings you back to district information.
Right. Okay, so I saw school report card there. You kind of flip through, so right above that, that's where you can find our own dashboard information, like MAP testing scores and that stuff. So it's not just the school report card they look at. We've talked about that in the past of telling our own story on that.
Correct. So we are working with Forecast 5 or 5, that provider of that tool to integrate them. So I know Chris or Dr. Webster is still working on finalizing her dashboard. And then we're also working with Mrs. Stucker to bring hers online as well. So that will all be brought over. They're finalizing theirs. We have to have some conversations on how to integrate the two. But yes, they will be brought over at the department level and additionally probably under resources or overview and reports. So information will be in multiple places, but it'll all bring you back to a central location.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, go ahead. Anybody else? David, the issue that I had just with helping people get information with our current site was that some of that stuff, the transparency stuff, seemed buried, not intentionally, but you had to know to go to operations and then click this little financial transparency. So I like that that's available from the main menu navigation there. I don't know, for me, I guess I would consider it a resource. So that whole overview and reports section to me seems like more of a resource than our district. But either way, as long as that stuff is accessible, up front, the board meetings, I like those being front and center now. In some way, I think to tie in board docs into that, because I think that's another thing that the public is very confused on. They don't understand how to find out what's going on at meetings. They don't know that little link that says board docs takes you to anything about the agenda or stuff like that. So
yes, there will be some more conversations. Like I said, once we launch, there's a lot of partners with this provider that have partnerships with other school software. So we hope to bring some of that stuff over to make it easier to find the board docs.
Fantastic. But
Yeah, I agree with Eric. I would like to see board docs be a little more prominent. You kind of have to dig for it to get to it now. So I think it ought to be out there because it really is, it's our agenda for every meeting. So people ought to be able to find that quickly and easily. So if you can find a way to do that, that'd be great.
Any other questions?
David,
Oh,
what
looks
does the COVID-19 update, what kind of information will be there for us?
So, I would click on it, but we have not outfitted that page yet. That will be a central dashboard of all COVID communications and information that is currently available. So we're going to streamline all that into a central area that it's easier to find. Because right now it's kind of in different locations. Kind of goes back to how this provider allows different parts to talk to one another. So we're able to funnel information from different areas into a central page. So that will be a COVID-19 landing page. And that could also swap out. So like when we have kindergarten roundup, that might switch over to that for a few weeks because that's our focus at the time. So that area you will see rotate throughout the year just based on the different focuses of the district. Not saying that, COVID-19 won't disappear. It may just go into a different area for a little bit while we focus on kindergarten registration, online registration for next year and stuff like that. And that's customizable to each school. So you may also see at the high school course selection in that area because that's what they're working on at that point. So that's how that will be used.
Okay, thank you.
David, when did you say this is going to be accessible?
Middle of next week.
Oh, that fast, great.
Yes. Any other questions or comments? Great.
No, looks good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
That takes us to the Return to Learn update. And typically I start with some information. I'm changing things up a little bit. I want to start with some of the data. It's been about 6 weeks since we've met. This is about the last 10 days worth of data here. You'll see a longer trend here in just a second, but it shows you about the last 10 days worth of test positivity, total number tested, positive tests over the last 10 days. Each of the test positivity numbers represents a 7-day rolling average. So that's not necessarily the average for that, the number for that day that's in the daily test positivity. It's the rolling average for the previous 6 days and that day. You can see that on December 30th, we were at 12.3. It peaked at 14% on January 4th and has started to come down over the last couple of days. This is taken right off the IDPH website, so you can see where our numbers peaked right around the week of November 15th. You see that large peak there. It came down, spiked again, and in the beginning of December, it came down again, and then we spiked a little bit again after the new year. So I'll talk about this in just a second, but in a little bit more detail, but you can see that in general, the trend is down from about the middle of November. Same is true for test positivity, although the spike after the first of the year is a little bit higher. Overall, the trend is down. And just kind of keeping in what I've done in previous meetings, just want to report Sycamore and Cortland zip code data. These happen to be the two most populated zip codes in our school district, so I've reported those. You can see some fluctuation there in the Sycamore zip code, as well as in the Cortland zip code. The most recent number is 10.91. You can see a couple times there the number is yellow. It's faint because it's been under that 8% mark. So a little bit of fluctuation over the last week or so. So again, a little bit of history. The adaptive pause began November 30th. That was based on the recommendation from the DeKalb County Health Department. Due to anticipated spikes in the number of COVID cases after Thanksgiving as well as through the beginning of 2021, that includes the Christmas holiday as well as the New Year. Their recommendation was that the pause end on Friday, January 15th. Schools are closed Monday, January 18th to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So the first possible day of student attendance would be Tuesday the 19th. As of the end of last week, the health department has recommended that the adaptive pause not be extended for 3 reasons in specific. And I'm going to pause here for just a second. We've looked at health metrics, throughout the last several months, and we realize the importance of that, but we also realize that there are other factors that I think it's wise to take into account. One of the things that the health department pointed out is that Although the numbers have fluctuated, the trend is down. The number of COVID cases that was feared, we never really got there, it did increase. So I think the adaptive pause was appropriate. Fortunately, we never got to the levels that the health department feared that we would get to. The decline actually started, going back to about mid-November. One of the other reasons that the health department issued that recommendation not to extend the adaptive pause was because COVID vaccinations were approved during the pause. It's hard to believe that when we started the pause November 30th, none of the vaccines had been approved at that point. I believe 4 of them have been approved now, and not only have they been approved, but they've started to arrive in DeKalb County, and folks within the county have been vaccinated. As a matter of fact, 10 members of our health staff, including our head nurse, Corey Mock, who's here tonight and talk here in a little bit, were vaccinated last Friday. There are some symptoms, some side effects of the vaccinations. So I think it worked out. Depends on how you look at this. Corey may not agree with this. It worked out well because he had a couple days to recover, but that happened to be over the weekend when you've got a break. So I'm not sure that that coincided well. But not only have the vaccinations been approved, but they are here and being administered to folks throughout the county. Last but not least, the health department highlighted the fact that rapid testing has improved a little bit, and it is now available in the county through the DeKalb County Health Department at no cost to school districts, and Corey's going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But that rapid testing, we think over time will help us identify cases of COVID, as well as hopefully help us get staff back into the classroom when we can tell that they don't have COVID. So we're going to work through that process with the health department and using those tests. But I think that we're the first school district in the county who's completed that agreement, and Corey will talk a little bit about that. So, like we've talked about for the last couple of months, the health department highlighted the fact that there are multiple things coming together here. The trend is down. The vaccinations not only have been approved, but they are starting to be administered in the county, and rapid testing is now available to help with staffing, we believe, in the long term. So, based on those 3 things, the health department recommended that the pause not be extended and that schools start to consider bringing students back for in-person learning. If you remember, before the Christmas holiday and the break, the one remaining challenge that we were facing, and Mr. Schrader alluded to this, was staffing in our schools. The number of COVID cases, close contacts, symptomatic individuals, those numbers were fairly high. So we were having trouble staffing all of our schools, not just the K-5, but we weren't able to open the middle school or the high school because of that. So when the health department issued that recommendation not to extend the pause, I forwarded that on to the administrative team. Yesterday, I started some preliminary conversations with the leadership throughout the school district. We also had an administrative meeting today, and we talked specifically about our ability to staff all of our schools throughout the school district, not just K-5, but the middle school and the high school as well. Based on their feedback and the substitute plans they have in place and the plans that they have throughout the district to be able to welcome all of our students back, we do think that we can staff our schools appropriately and that we can do that safely. Based on that, I'm recommending that we transition back to our hybrid remote learning model in all schools K through 12. So all 5 elementary schools, our middle school, and our high school starting Tuesday the 19th. We'll continue to monitor all available data as well as work with the health department to schedule the vaccinations for our staff as they are available. In fact, this afternoon, late this morning actually, we got an email that the health department was ready to vaccinate another small group of our staff, some of our occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech therapists, because of the one-on-one contact they have with students. They are going to get their vaccination starting on Thursday and I believe through Friday. So we're seeing small groups become available to get that vaccination. We're probably a couple of weeks off, at least several weeks off from the entire staff getting vaccinated. I'll talk about that timeline here next, but we'll work with them as vaccinations are available. We'll work to get those scheduled. We've got a couple of ideas on how we can do that best to get all of our staff vaccinated in a time period, knowing that there are going to be some side effects. So doing that in a time period where they can get vaccinated, have some downtime to recover from any side effects they might experience, and then get back to teaching. So very likely that we'll need to implement remote learning on a temporary basis, whether that's a week or a couple of days, in order to allow staff to be vaccinated, recover from any side effects, and then get back to the hybrid model. Probably have to do that twice for the first dose as well as the second dose. So in terms of a favorable, potentially favorable timeline, we bring students back on Tuesday the 19th. We're probably several weeks off yet from getting our entire staff vaccinated. That gives us a couple of weeks to get students in the building, return to in-person hybrid learning before we have to schedule that first remote break to get all of our staff vaccinated. Probably sometime in let's say, the middle of February, the end of February. Once that happens, our plan will be to transition back to hybrid learning as soon as that week is over, that time period is over, so that we can get back to in-person learning. Give that about 3 weeks. The vaccination that's been most widely available here in DeKalb County has been the vaccination that requires a 28-day window between the first and the second vaccination. So we'll take that second remote break sometime probably in mid, maybe even late March, get staff vaccinated. May have a week where we bring students back, but then we'll have spring break. That takes us to the end of March. Once spring break is over, we come back in April. All of our staff will have had the opportunity to be vaccinated. Vaccinations are optional, they're not mandatory. But at that point, we believe that all of our staff will have had the opportunity to get vaccinated. The initial recommendation from CDC is that even after your second vaccination, if you've been in close contact with a positive COVID case, you're still going to need to quarantine, because even though you may be safer because you've received both doses of the vaccination, you may still be able to transmit COVID through close contact. So that may change. You know, we're still at the outset of administering vaccinations, so we'll stay in touch with the health department, the IDPH, and the CDC, follow their guidance. But that timeline includes a couple of breaks that gets us from January 19th through spring break. And then we're looking at essentially the fourth quarter of the school year, and hopefully being able to do that in person, you know, through June 4th, which I believe is the last day of school. I do want to kind of a couple of cautions here. It's critical that our entire community continues to follow safety protocols. I can't stress that enough. Our students and our staff are a subset or a sample of our community. So we are all in this together. We really are going to need everybody in the community to continue to follow those safety protocols until everybody's had the opportunity to get vaccinated and we build what scientists are referring to as herd immunity. We need that to keep our schools open, but more importantly, we need everybody to work together, because that means the safety and the health and well-being of our entire community. So we're not there yet. The light at the end of the tunnel seems to be getting a little bit bigger every day, but we're not there quite yet. So we'll ask our staff and students, their families, as well as all of our community to continue to follow those safety guidelines so that we can keep our doors open and keep everybody safe. The other thing I want to just mention here is that when we start school on Tuesday, that's a major transition. It's a major transition for our families, our students, but also for our staff. So we're just going to ask for everybody to be patient as we work through that, especially at the middle school and the high school, who have not had the opportunity to have students back in the building since last spring. I was reminded in a couple of emails over the last couple of days that it's been over 300 days since some of those students have been in the building for school. So we just ask for a little bit of grace, especially as we get going here, that it will be a heavy lift, particularly at the middle school and the high school, having not done it before, but even at the elementary school. It's going to be a heavy lift. So we just ask everybody to be patient and work with us. A little bit of grace goes a long way. Our staff, I think, has done a phenomenal job of doing that. If our families could help us a little bit longer and do that as well, we'll get through these first couple of weeks hybrid learning and get those under our belt and move forward. So before I turn the reins over to Corey to talk a little bit about the rapid testing program, just want to answer any questions that the board may have. This is essentially the end of my return to learn comments.
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions / comments, and I don't want these questions to overshadow the celebration that is getting everybody back in the classroom next Tuesday. But do need to be a little bit forward-looking, and I also think we need to set some expectations for the community, for our students and their parents, as far as what the rest of the year might look like. Because I know, based on the questions I've been getting, people are very eager to get back in the classroom, get back to what last year looked like. And we've talked throughout this year about the modifications to make hybrid work for now. And so I think the natural question that these people are bringing up, which are good ones, is what does the transition closer to normal look like? So right now our hybrid is 2 days in school week. When we started talking about this in July, it was every other Friday we were going to get them in. So kids would be getting 5 days every 10. So I guess the first question is those asynchronous Fridays, is there a discussion to eliminate those and start getting kids in every other Friday at some point? The second was the shortened school days that we have right now because of, I think that was originally some busing restrictions and maybe lunchtime protocols. Is there a plan by the end of the year, post-spring break, post-vaccinations, that we're going to be able to expand those school days to be a little bit longer? And then I guess the ultimate question is, when are we going to be able to get kids back in 5 days a week? Is that something that is completely off the table for this year and we really just need to be focusing on the next school year for that? Or are there a set of conditions that we've thought about that could lead to that happening before that time period? And again, I'm not saying that we have to rush that, and I don't want to make it sound like we're jumping way past next Tuesday, but these are questions that obviously the kids and their parents are starting to ask, and so I would rather temper their expectations now if that's something that's completely off the table than to keep them hoping unnecessarily.
Sure. So some really good questions, and I guess right at the beginning I'll say, and I think Chris, you asked this question at one of our last meetings, was, are we open to change? Are things set in this kind of plan for, not perpetuity, but for the remainder of the school year? And we'll continue to monitor the situation. I'd really love to get a couple weeks under our belt, work through this transition, and things like the length of the day, asynchronous Fridays. I think all of those things will continue to be part of the conversation. But whether or not we make any changes, I think really depends on how these next couple of weeks go, how our data goes. Right now, I think my personal opinion is one of the things that's helping our numbers is that it's pretty cold outside. So the spike at the beginning of November followed Halloween, and a pretty mild beginning to November. It's pretty cold right now. So if you're like me, you don't go outside until it's 50 degrees again. And most people are staying inside more than they were. So as we get through February and into March, well, the warm weather's right around the corner. You start to see people going outside again. So we know, one thing we've learned throughout this pandemic is that the circumstances change all the time. So we'll continue to monitor that. But I'd love to get students in school for at least a couple of weeks, see how that goes. But I think those are both really good questions. Does the length of day change? Can we work through the issues that we were faced at the beginning of the school year? Lunch was a big one, especially at the high school and the middle school, bringing that many people together at a time when they had to remove masks. The K-5s, especially some of the smaller buildings like West, are fortunate that they can space students out when they have the mask off and they're eating. Some of the other buildings have some more challenges when it comes to that. So I think that those are things that need to continue to be on the table. I don't want to set a timeline for those, but our goal is to continue to do this successfully, do it safely, and then look at ways that we can expand it as we get to the end of the school year. So what does the end of the school year look like? Again, I think I mentioned this to the board, and I'll share it with the community. That light at the end of the tunnel is getting brighter, and that's a great feeling. One of the big challenges that we will still face is that vaccinations have only been approved for individuals that are 16 and older or 18 and older, depending on the manufacturer. So while we will be able to vaccinate our staff, and that provides some safety in terms of being able to staff the buildings, and even the health department has identified and agreed that schools are not super spreaders. Typically people are bringing COVID into the schools, they're not transmitting it at schools. But until our students can be vaccinated safely, that's a challenge that we're going to have to face here for, I would guess, at least the next several months. I would hope that by the time summer rolls around or the end of the summer, that we're in a position where large portions of our students can be vaccinated, or at least all of our, maybe even all of our students have the opportunity to be vaccinated. One of the questions is whether or not the State Board of Education is going to require COVID vaccine if it's approved for students younger than 16 and 18. There's a lot of debate about that. We'll see where that comes down. If that's not mandated, what kind of plan do we have for students, to learn in the fall if they've chosen not to be vaccinated? I think one of the great outcomes of the remote learning and hybrid learning that we've implemented this year is that if we have to be flexible with those students because they've opted not to get vaccinated for whatever reason, we respect that. We have a lot of experience to work with students in a virtual environment or in a much different way than we have in the past when they had to be out of the building. So I would love to say that we can finish the school year in a much more normal way than we did last year, but I would be extremely cautious about expecting a full return for all students, all staff before the end of this school year. I'd love to see that happen. Let's hope for the best, but we need to expect the worst in the meantime and really expect that approval for the vaccinations for younger students is going to take quite a bit more time. So I hope I answered all your questions. Like a good superintendent, I dodged, giving you a black and white answer, but I think those are really good things, and we'll continue to look at those things and plan. But right now there's some excitement, there's some trepidation and some anxiety too about coming back on Tuesday. But I haven't seen student vehicles in the high school parking lot since I got here, so I'm looking forward to that. Any other questions?
So I've got one. We've been having the same debate at my company, as I'm sure all places are, is whether or not we're going to require our employees to be vaccinated or not. And we've been seeking a lot of legal counsel. I didn't know if we had talked with our attorneys about that. We're getting feedback both ways as far as don't write any policy yet, but you can or you cannot. But then you have other ADA issues as far as making reasonable accommodations for those that would qualify for given exceptions. And I'm wondering if we've had any discussions legally on what we should or shouldn't be considering along those lines. I'm not saying we should or shouldn't. I'm just wondering what the conversations have been in regards to that.
At this time, what we've been told is that the vaccination is optional, both legally and through the health department. At some point in the future, there may be a situation where we can, mandate the vaccine, but even under those circumstances, we would work with our teacher representatives, whether that's the SEA, CESA, whoever that happens to be. But at this time, what we've been told is that the vaccine needs to be optional. If staff opt not to be vaccinated, then we need to respect that. And if they have legitimate medical reasons to continue not being in school, we do have a handful of staff that meet those requirements and those thresholds. We'll continue to work with them in that way. That may change at some point in the future, but again, that's something that we would work with our staff on and come to an agreement on.
I think that's the majority legal opinion that's floating around out there, not just for school districts, but for corporations who have employees as well. So I think it's kind of a new enough concept that nobody wants to force anybody to go down a particular path.
I agree. Any other questions for me?
Is there any technology update as far as the Chromebooks?
I was hoping to give you an update, and I'm going to check my email before I give that update. There is no official update. We've received information that seems to indicate that our first large shipment of Chromebooks may be coming in the very near future. We've emailed between Friday, yesterday, and today probably a dozen times to our sales representative, and they are hopeful that they'll arrive, but as of yet they haven't. When those Chromebooks do arrive, whenever that may be, so the next question is, as soon as they arrive at our vendor, part of what we've purchased is what's called white glove service. So they unpackage them, get them into our software to be able to use, so that when they arrive here, we literally take them out of the box, hand it to a student with a case on it, and off they go. That's about a 2 or 3 day turnaround when that happens, and we are ready to celebrate when we get that call that those Chromebooks are here. They think they may be arriving soon. Shipments are arriving, not just ours, but other shipments are starting to arrive, and so that's good news. That they're starting to not only be manufactured but distributed and shipped. So I think we're getting closer, but no, I don't have any specific good news tonight yet. Okay. Well, at this time, I'm going to ask Corey to come to the microphone and talk a little bit about the rapid testing program that we're going to implement with the health department.
Share something positive. I feel like typically my name has been kind of hand in hand with some of the guidance that has made things a little more difficult for the district. So happy to be sharing something that's going to be a little helpful, I believe. So one of the things that has been so helpful for us as nursing staff in navigating all of this guidance is our wonderful friends over at the health department here in DeKalb County. They have been great partners for us and just an amazing resource throughout this pandemic. We're very fortunate that we have a very strong, good working relationship with their staff over there. One of the things that they do for us is as guidance changes and new things become available, they will host a Zoom meeting with the county school nurses to give us their updates and kind of how they're interpreting things here in our county. And at our December meeting, Cindy Graves, the communicable disease nurse at the health department, mentioned that they were doing some pilot test sites with Binex Now rapid antigen test, and that they would eventually be looking to have other partner sites as well. And I know we had talked about some potential testing options at different times during the pandemic as potential options that weren't really a good fit for our district, but this one seemed like it might be a better fit. So we connected right away and got the ball rolling about Sycamore School District partnering with the health department to become a test site. And we started working on that a little bit before Christmas break. So one of the primary advantages of implementing rapid testing here in the district is that it does provide us the potential to get our staff back a little quicker than maybe they would be going through just the regular channels. So providing testing to symptomatic individuals is one of the pieces of the puzzle that likely has to happen before a staff member can get back, or a student. So we continue to work with the health department, getting all the paperwork filled out, and we just recently finalized our memorandum of understanding with the health department. Actually, that was just today. This day has been so long, it feels like it was a couple days ago. Under that MOU, our school district is now a partner test site with the health department. And so we just have a couple pieces of the puzzle that have to be completed before we can be official and start testing, but that should happen in the very near future. So a couple of things that make the Binex test different than other testing that we've looked at before is this program is free through the health department, so we'll receive our supplies through the health department, and there's no cost for the test to be done. And then the other thing is that this previous rapid testing has been more for surveillance and for asymptomatic individuals, and the Binex Now is specifically designed for symptomatic individuals. So it creates a little bit of a different situation for us that's going to be helpful. So our initial plan is to pilot this Binex Now testing with our staff and any household members of our staff who are symptomatic. So if a child who's symptomatic and the staff member has to stay home, we could test the child with and this is optional, this is an option for our staff, or a grandparent that's living in the house. We could look at testing students. It would be available to test students. At this point, we're not looking at doing that. It does present some additional challenges. Example, just securing consent. We need parental or guardian consent prior to the testing. And then just getting all of the pieces in place to be able to do that in all of our buildings. So we're gonna pilot it with the staff and see how it goes. And then if it's being successful and helpful, then we will work towards getting additional staff trained and set up through the health department to be able to do that testing and cross some of those roadblocks or challenges for looking at students. So we're excited about this. Any of our licensed health staff could be trained to do the testing. So right now, there's 2 of us that are going to be signed off hopefully on Thursday, and then go from there. So it's an exciting thing, and I think it'll be part of the solution. Getting staff back quicker obviously is going to ease some of that staffing burden that we've been faced with throughout this time. So any questions any of you have?
How does the test work?
It's a simple nasal swab, so it's not the one that goes way up and is super uncomfortable, just a simple nasal swab in both sides, and then 15-minute turnaround time for results.
Great. Wow.
Yep. Any other questions?
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you.
That really is the end of the Return to Learn update. I guess I'll take one more second here if there's any other questions. Okay. I like that we've got James virtual. It's harder for him to ask questions, so that's good. I'm going to keep moving.
There's a delay. Wait 20 minutes from now, he'll have a
I
question.
have a bunch of questions, yeah.
Okay, so last part of the superintendent's report is future focus. This is the first meeting of the month, so wanted to add a future focused item. Just as a reminder, these are things that kind of spark a little bit of conversation and discussion, but things to just kind of bring to the surface, talk about a little bit, and keep on our radar. So the topic I chose this month was student assessment, so it kind of dovetails nice with part of Mr. Schrader's presentation. So I'm going to ask everybody to just kind of take a step back as we talk about student assessment a little bit. And when we think of student assessment, it's easy to think of standardized tests, state tests, a 5-page test that you took in chemistry class, or SAT, ACT, you name it. It's easy to immediately get drawn to that kind of memory. But when it comes down to it, student assessment is really just about how we assess how students are learning, which can be done in a number of ways, and Ryan talked about that a little bit too. It can be done through those traditional tests. It can be done through quizzes, homework assignments, discussion, one-on-one conversations with students, small groups, surveys, presentations, you name it. Asking students to produce something, not necessarily a test, but maybe the content area. As a former science teacher, sometimes I ask students to make something for me. So their ability to do that was enough for me to gauge how they were learning. There's almost an infinite number of ways that you can assess how students are learning, from very formal, like the ACT or the SAT, to just simple interactions with students in the classroom. And of course, like I said, that depends on the topic and the content area, age, developmental level of the students too. And often when we talk about assessments, we talk about 2 kinds of assessments. So formative assessments and summative assessments. Formative assessments are the kind of assessments that we make on an ongoing basis, almost in real time, in the classroom or in the learning environment. So when I think of formative assessments, it might be a 3 or 4 or 5 question quiz, something that's fast, that gives you immediate feedback. We have technology that helps us do that electronically now, so students with a Chromebook or a device can enter their answers, and teachers can see that data pop up in a pie chart or a bar graph immediately, and have a sense of how many students in the class picked up on that math topic or whatever the topic may be. It may also be as easy as just walking around the room watching students work. And teachers are trained to pick up on the cues and the evidence that they see as they walk around the classroom, to just get a sense of whether or not students are learning. Formative assessments most often help us to adjust or pivot our instructional practices. So one of the things that formative assessments do is that if you're teaching 25 students how to multiply 2 times 2, and you give that quick formative assessment, and they're not getting it, you stop what you're doing, you adjust, you go back, you remediate a little bit, you provide more examples, you adjust what you're doing in the classroom to the feedback that you're getting from the students. So formative assessments typically are a little bit faster. You get that immediate feedback, and it allows you to, as a teacher, as a professional, is to use your training to pivot a little bit so that we're not leaving students behind. Summative assessments, on the other hand, typically are done at the end of a learning activity, or it could be a grading period or a unit. Helps us to gauge what students learned over a longer period of time, and oftentimes can be used as a benchmark when you're comparing how students have performed year after year, or grading period after grading period. The MAP assessments that we've traditionally done, not been able to do this year yet, are done in fall, winter, and spring. So that gives us immediate feedback on how students are doing at that point in time, but it also helps us to assess how our students are performing to previous years. So what was the data like in the previous fall or winter or spring? That data can also be used through the year, obviously, to see how students have performed and grown over a period of time through the school year. So that data is really helpful in about 3 ways. First of all, it helps us helps us and our students to track their individual student growth. So with younger students, you can still have conversations about what they've learned, although it's a lot easier to have those conversations as students get older and they become more aware of what they're learning and how they're doing. A lot of times teachers these days will ask students, what did you learn? What does that mean? How can you use that? At the end of the day, teaching and learning is about helping students learn and grow as individuals. So that's really the primary way, in my opinion, that we use student assessment data. But it also helps us from an organizational standpoint to guide our instructional practices, our strategies, what do we believe is good instruction throughout the district, as well as curriculum development in both the short and the long term. So when you're looking at that data from each fall or each winter or each spring, or the SAT or the state tests that come back, although I'm not a huge fan of state tests, they do play a part in the assessment data that we get. How do we use that? What's it telling us about our students overall, and maybe not individual students as much as larger groups of students? How are our seniors performing? How are our high schools, how's our high school performing? How are our elementary schools performing? That sort of thing. The other thing it does, and I had a great conversation with Dr. Webster about this earlier today, she reminded me that it helps us to allocate our resources and make sure that what we are doing is aligned with our goals, both short and long term. So if our goal is to improve our reading scores, we track that data individually to see how students are performing, then we track that data to see how we're performing overall. And if we're meeting that goal, if we're progressing the way that we expect to, we can probably use some of those resources maybe in a little bit different way in the future. But it helps us to allocate our resources to make sure that we're sticking with our goals. As we collect that data, this is one of my, assessment can be kind of a boring topic, but it connects to the next topic, which is a little bit more interesting to me. One of the other outcomes to collecting student assessment data is how we report it to students and to parents. So more often than not, we got report cards when we were younger. We got an A, B, C, or D. That was about it. Everybody wanted an A. You might not have gotten the A, you might have gotten a B, or I might have gotten a couple Ds here and there. That's how progress is reported. That's required by the state that we report progress to parents. That used to be a report card that was every midterm or quarter or semester. Now with programs like Infinite Campus, parents can watch their students' performance in real time, day to day. My kids aren't necessarily a fan of that, but it's a useful tool for parents. Currently, our elementary schools use standards-based grading. So this looks a little bit different than A, B, C, D. Some of the marks that you might see in an elementary school are students are performing satisfactory, or they're developing, or they are mastering skills. The report cards are longer, so instead of science and a letter grade, it's science with multiple essential skills or standards that teachers assess those students on an ongoing basis. And then they enter that descriptor so that as a parent, when I get that information at home, I know how my student is doing, not just in reading overall, but I know how they're doing with decoding or vocabulary or comprehension. Standards-based grading often provides more information, but there are some challenges. For example, it can take a lot longer to produce those standards-based report cards. It would be great if some point in the future, we've got software programs that gather a lot of information, and then they put that together in real time so that parents can see that. In some ways that's happening now, and in some ways we still need to improve. But one of the things I love about standards-based grading is that the feedback is a lot better for parents. So you're not just looking at a B for reading and wondering how your student can improve or what they're really good at. You get a lot more warm feedback that gives you a better idea of how they're performing and what they need to work on. As opposed to standards-based grading, what's more traditional is letter grades. So our middle school and our high school are still using traditional grading methods, like most schools are, so that doesn't make them, unique. A lot of middle schools and high schools still use traditional grading or letter grades because it can be a lot harder at that level to use standards-based grading. It's not that it can't be done, there are just some challenges at those two levels. The letter grade might provide a faster snapshot, but it just doesn't give the same kind of information that standards-based grading can do. It's also more familiar to parents. I've been an educator for almost, a long time. Let's just leave it at that. So as an educator, I get that. So when I've seen standards-based report cards, that's really interesting to me because it helps me understand how individual students are performing. Our youngest, John's in 5th grade, so when he got his progress report from North Grove and the standards were laid out for us, we had a much better idea of what that meant. It can be challenging to parents. I live with a very educated parent in my house, and when that standards-based report card comes home, it doesn't always make sense. Because when you're not an educator, you don't know what decoding means. You don't know what reading comprehension necessarily means. Now, those aren't necessarily the terms that we use on our standards-based report cards. But when you make that shift from a letter grade or a more traditional grading system to standards-based, you have to keep in mind that oftentimes your parents aren't used to that. So what you need to do is educate them a little bit, and maybe that transition needs to be done over the course of a couple of years as opposed to one. Again, the letter grades gives you pretty quick feedback, but you don't often get the additional feedback that can give you a much more robust picture of how students are progressing. If I went the wrong way. I did have a conversation with Mr. Carlson about this topic. Dr. Webster had already had some conversation with high school staff. Our high school has a personalized learning committee that really covers a lot of different topics, and standards-based grading happens to be one of the topics that they are discussing. Whether or not they'll get that moved to implement standards-based grading remains to be seen. It can be really challenging, particularly at the high school level, because high schools are built on the credit system. In addition, college admissions are based on things like GPA, which is calculated with letter grades. So it can be much more challenging at the high school, but that doesn't mean that it can't be done. Hybrid system can be used where you get some of that additional feedback, but there's still some sort of letter grade assigned so that you can still use those systems like GPA that colleges look for. In addition, a lot of colleges and university admission policies have started to change over the last couple of years. So whereas in the past colleges and universities might have relied on GPA solely or class rank, they're not necessarily doing just that anymore. They are looking at a broader view of their students, the activities that they participated in, and things like that. One of the advantages of COVID is that some schools haven't been able to do the testing that they've typically done. So that's kind of forced colleges who depend on tuition to shift gears and still be able to work through the admissions process with students, but start to use data, a little bit different data, or use the data that's provided differently. So we'll continue having that conversation and likely involve the middle school in that as well, and see if that's something that they want to look at and consider changing. But just wanted to touch on those things. So where does that leave us now? Again, as we work through the pandemic, And learning has looked different, and teaching has looked different. One of the things I want to do is kind of not miss the opportunity to have a conversation about how assessment and grading reporting can look different too. Again, this is kind of a higher level, broad strokes kind of conversation. But one of the things that I could see coming out of the pandemic, whether it's this spring or into next year or even after that, is just continuing to look at how students learn differently, how we assess how they're learning, and then I think probably most importantly, how we report that. Not just for our records, but so that students and their parents or guardians can take that information and work with their students and work with the schools to make sure that we're continuing to make the best progress that we can. So again, student assessment and grading, thought I would throw that out there tonight. Would be glad to answer any questions, or if there's any discussion that you guys want to have, would be glad to do that too.
You alluded to the fact that Infinite Campus is kind of taking away the need for a report card because parents can look at it in real time. Is that considered reporting by the state, what they require us to do? So would you need to produce a report card still?
You don't need to do that now. I've been in education long enough to live in the paper copy where you still had to mail a paper copy home every quarter.
Yeah.
Or more often than that if you chose to do that. Live through that and the implementation of student databases that tracked grading and reported it and provided a portal for parents to be able to log in and get that information in real time. There was a time that you had to do both. That even though you had that online gradebook that parents could access whenever they wanted, parents weren't used to doing that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't fair to expect that they were going to do that on their own. So there was a time that you still had to produce a paper copy. We're not required to necessarily do that anymore unless parents request that. So if for some reason they don't have reliable access to internet or technology, we'll still produce a paper copy if needed. But by and large, not just in our school district and in our community, by and large, I think technology is widespread enough now that most families have access to that kind of technology. And now, whether they check it or not remains to be seen. But now, instead of having to wait for that report card to come every 9 weeks or at the end of every semester, they have that information right away. And one of the challenges that schools have always faced is that for the first, 5 to 9 weeks of the school year, unless you were calling and talking to your son or daughter's teacher on a regular basis, you really didn't have any idea how they were doing in school. Now you know that within the first couple of weeks. So in some cases, it probably cuts out some of the conversation with the teacher unless there's a problem. But I think the access to that information now, what we can provide to parents and what parents can collect and keep an eye on is totally different, and it's going to continue to grow. I can think of what it used to look like 10 years ago, and I can't imagine what it's going to look like 10 years from now.
One of the things that has really served our district well, I think, over the years is really a summative assessment, which would be our MAP testing. And I mean, that's seen us through some really tough times when the state was shifting tests every other year or every year. There was no consistency in kind of tracking student progress. But our MAP tests have really seen us through, and we've really put a lot of stock in those to get us through those hurdles that come with the state's evaluation tools. So I guess I was wondering, where are we this year with MAP testing? And, is it something we're going to be able to implement to see kind of where progress is for our students? And then kind of as a subset to that question, all this other data that we're putting together, is it going to be somehow collected in some place so that we can add it to a student's portfolio, so to speak, as they progress through their academic career? And then we'll have access to all that so we can see whether they're, living up to their potential or not?
I was 2 for 2 until you asked the last question. Now 2 for 3. Yes, we will be able to test students, administer the MAP test. One of the biggest challenges was technology and the fact that if a student had didn't have the right kind of device at home, and remember, we have a lot of students K-8 that are using a personal device, not a district-provided device. It's hard to get them to be able to log on and take that map test, especially if they were remote learners who weren't coming into school. So
we haven't done it this year?
we have not done it in the fall. Our plan is to do the winter map testing. And if those Chromebooks come in the very near future, we're going to be able to do that fairly soon. We don't want to, especially after kids have been out so long, you don't want to assess the heck out of them when they get back. But that data is important. So one of the great things about this district is that it hasn't relied on state tests as a benchmark for progress. You've chosen to go with MAP. We've chosen to go with MAP, although that decision was made before I got here. And you've tracked that information over a long period of time. I don't necessarily disagree with the state tests that are out there. My frustration is that every couple of years they change.
Inconsistency.
And even if the name of the assessment doesn't change, the questions and the validity of the assessment change from year to year. So the fact that we've used MAP for so long gives us that longitudinal data, which I think is a real benefit. So we don't want to lose that. We will be able to do that. And when that new technology comes in, that's going to allow us to get one step closer to doing that. So that was your first question. What was your second one? You have to remind me.
About all the information that we're collecting that
Dr.
Chris was talking to you about. I mean, is that all going to be assembled in one place and we can look at it and analyze that data across the student's lifetime with the district?
So yes, and I don't know. Yes, Dr. Webster's probably sitting on her hands at home, waiting to talk about the district dashboard. I know that that's been in progress for a couple of years. I can safely say that we're very close to being able to unveil that for the board. In fact, I've talked to Chris about doing that. I've seen the dashboard, so I've seen what it looks like right now. It's not complete, but it looks, the data that's in there already is nice to be able to look at and to be able to manipulate. So at the end of this month, she's going to show that dashboard to the administrative teams so that they can see it and start to teach them how to use it a little bit. But then the goal is that she will unveil that, so to speak, with the board as well and show what that data dashboard looks like. It's through 5Lab. We upload the data as well as some of the state data they get on their own, but once the data is in there, it's in there, so we can look at it over long periods of time. Your last question is a really good one, and it's not one that I've thought of, so I don't know that I've got an answer for that. But that data dashboard helps us to track large groups of students or the entire district over a long period of time. But the ability for individual students to track their progress over time is a different ballgame. The current data dashboard will not allow us to do that, and that's probably something that Infinite Campus would do, not a district dashboard like that. So it's a great question. I don't know that that's a feature that Infinite Campus provides right now, but as technology advances, I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that were available in the not so distant future.
That might be something to talk about in the future.
Yeah, there you go, future focused.
That's where my point was the student portfolio piece, whether they're college bound or non-college bound and they're heading towards career tech, having that information in that last sentence with that hybrid type system, so they do have a sense of I did A or B or C work, but they get the feedback, not only themselves, but also a potential employer or someone down the road that they can share that as part of their portfolio that travels with them as they move on and leave us.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, Jim hit on what I wanted to touch on, so that's something I would love to talk about a little bit more too.
Yeah, I'll do some checking. And like I said, I don't think Infinite Campus offers that. I would doubt that any student database offers that right now, but it doesn't hurt to ask the question and see if that's something that's in the works, whether it's what we want to see or at least the beginning of what we'd like to see.
Right.
Yeah, I was at a teleconference today, and one of the things they said is, we collect a lot of data, and that's a great thing, but if you don't do anything with what you collect, why collect it?
It's a really good point.
Yep.
Steve, I want to thank you for another great futures-focused segment there. I do really enjoy the idea of the standards-based grading, and someone who's seen the somewhat arbitrary nature of letter-based grading can certainly see the faults in that system. I remember a class in college, I think it was thermodynamics or something like that, but I remember getting a test back that had like 63% on the top, and while I was sitting there having my own little freak-out session at my desk, later come to find out that's a B in the class because of some, curve that got applied. Similarly, you were talking about your lifetime and how this stuff all aligned. Well, I was going through college at the time where computers were, becoming mainstream, web, everything was going digital, and there were, sites where you could go out and find, well, which teacher for this subject is the most lenient on grading. So you can quickly see how that doesn't necessarily lead to a good objective evaluation of your performance as a student. So I certainly applaud a standards-based. But I know that I have no knowledge of this area to be able to say one way or another whether we should do it, when it should be implemented. I really look to you and the rest of the staff, at the school district that are going through all this continuing ed and staying on top of these trends to say now's the time and here's how we should do it. But I certainly support it, and I guess it, especially at the middle school, would seem to make sense to be able to implement that pretty easily, because if they're coming off of 5th grade, getting graded that way, starting it at 6 and having that carry through at least till 8th grade wouldn't seem like a huge disruption, at least for both the parents and the students who are already accustomed to it.
And they may be having that conversation already. And I'd be surprised if they hadn't had the conversation about standards-based grading at some point. Whether or not they're having that conversation right now about, potentially making a change, they may be having that. I just didn't have a chance to talk to Mr. Clavin about that, but certainly something, especially after the presentation tonight, to follow up with and just kind of check in and see how they're doing.
But I definitely agree that provides a lot more information than just saying, oh, you got to be in that class, but that doesn't tell me what part of that class you were struggling with that led you to not get an A, or vice versa.
Yeah.
I can say that the initial transition from letter grades, even in grade school, to our different form here, it wasn't without its protests, let's put it that way. There was some kickback, feedback, but maybe now that we've been using it for a while, as you say, and people are a little more used to it and understand it a little bit better, maybe this is a good time to explore.
Well, and I'd be curious. I'd be curious to that point to know what sort of research might exist for how that does or does not motivate certain types of students. I think that there are those students who are motivated to get straight A's and to show up on, high on a class rank. I went to a high school that didn't report class rank, so you had no idea where you stood, and I never saw that as important. But when our Rotary Students of the Month come every month, Mr. Balter's clear, here's where they rank in their class. They've got a 4.4 out of 4 GPA, which just seems like a made-up number. But I'd be curious if that's something that's been studied, this transition. Does that take those maybe higher achievers and provide them less motivation to work hard because they can't get past, I can do it. There's no I can do it plus, is there? That'd be interesting to me.
Yeah.
And every year at graduation time, the valedictorian and the salutatorian seem like they're always slugging it out right until the very last second.
Top 3 or 4.
And it's just, a fraction.
I can tell you for sure, they absolutely do from experience. I mean, kids are so competitive, and that's such an important, oh my gosh, daily they come in, what's happening, what's changing, what's used to be. I'm sure it's similar to that now. Be interesting, very interesting to see how this would work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And technology is a great thing. I knew Chris would be following our conversation, so she did send me a couple of texts. The data dashboard does allow us to drill down to individual students, so it's not just that broad snapshot, it's individual students. And she said that psychologists have been involved in the development of the dashboard. So that portfolio idea, I'm going to read this so I get it right. So she's probably watching me at home right now. The psychologists were part of the dashboard conversations as they created it. So that ability to use that data and group it and maybe put it into portfolio, maybe not as far off in the future as I thought.
Good.
Thanks for your time, as well as you, Chris. Thanks for the text messages.
Wherever you are.
Yeah. And I think that takes me to the end of the superintendent's report.
All right. Open discussion and future agenda items. One thing we need to talk about is we have a board workshop scheduled for next Tuesday, which would be the 19th, which is the same day that we'll be bringing back students, and I'm not so sure that we should make the administration come in that day, that evening, and it's going to probably be a hectic day, so unless somebody has an objection, we can postpone that, and we'll regroup at a later date.
I think that's a good suggestion.
I agree.
We'll get an email out and start looking at potential rescheduled dates. I think there's a couple of topics that would be really beneficial to cover,
Yeah.
but nothing that's so urgent that we couldn't put it off.
Yeah.
So look for an email, and we'll settle on a new date.
Let's not go too far out, though, because then we get close to the other one and they kind of
Yeah,
butt up against each other.
yeah.
Other open discussion issues, observations, or questions? Future agenda items? Oh, okay. Is there a motion to go into executive session for the consideration of matters related to the appointment, employment, or dismissal of personnel, negotiations, and imminent litigation?
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call?
Davy?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Ren?
Yes.
Shiloh?
Yes.
Gumbel?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right. We'll recess for executive session and then return shortly for a final vote. All right, we're back in open session. Is there a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Roll call?
Jones,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes?
Ren,
Yes.
Shiloh,
Yes.
Davy,
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Dombeck.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Aye.